Hello everyone, let us continue with height and distance. Today's first question is, from 2 points A and B on the same side. Now this is the keyword in the question. Same side of the building, the angle of elevation of the top of the 30 degree and 60 degree respectively. If the height of the building is 10 meter, find the distance between A and B correct to 2 decimal places. Now first you have to understand the question and you have to draw the diagram. Suppose this is ground, this is tower, which is C and D. Now from 2 points A and B, if this is A and this will be your B, now angle of elevation means these two angles are 30 degree and 60 degree. So this is 30 degree and this is 60 degree. If the height of the building is 10 meter, that means CD is 10 meter. You have to find out the distance between A and B. This you have to find out, which is X. If AB is X, BD is Y. Here there are two right angle triangle. First is triangle CDA and second one is triangle CDB. So first you take triangle CDA, right? In triangle CDA, tan 30 degree equals to perpendicular by base. Tan 30 degree, which is 1 by root 3, equals to perpendicular means CD and base means AB. After that, 1 by root 3 equals to 10 divided by total distance, which is X plus Y. Now you cross multiply. X plus Y equals to 10 root 3. X plus Y equals to 10 into, put the value of root 3, which is 1.732. If you multiply these two, you will get 17.32 meter, which is the total distance, which is A and D. So here you have to find out the value of X, that you keep in mind. Now another triangle. In triangle CDB, tan 60 degree equals to P by B. Root 3 equals to, perpendicular is same, which is CD. Here base will be BD. Root 3 equals to 10 divided by Y. If you cross multiply, you will get 10 by root 3. Now rationalize it. Into root 3 into root 3. Now 10 root 3 divided by 3. 10 root 3 is already 17.32. 17.32 divided by 3. If you divide it, 17.32 divided by 3. 3 5s are 15. 2. 3 7s are 21. 3 7s are 21. Approximately you will get 5.77 meter, which is the value of Y. Now we know that X plus Y equals to 17.32. X plus Y equals to 17.32. X plus, put the value of Y, which is 5.77 equals to 17.32. So X equals to 17.32 minus 5.77. 17.32, 5.77. 12 minus 7, 5. 12 minus 7, 5. 6 minus 5, 1. That means 11.55 meter is the value of X, which is the distance from A and B. Now let us do question number 2. As observed from the top of 80-meter tall lighthouse, the angle of depression of two ships on the same side, again this is the key point, same side, of the lighthouse in horizontal line with its base are 30 degree and 40 degree. Now this 40 degree is not standard angle, you have to use cot theta. Find the distance between the two ships. Same question. Suppose this is A, this is B, this is C. Now this time this is angle of depression. Means first angle is 30 degree. Here you can write 30 degree and second angle is 40 degree. 40 degree. A, B, C, D. Again this is X and this is Y. So total distance is X plus Y and height is 80 meter. Again here there are two right angle triangle ABC and DBC. First take triangle ABC. In triangle ABC, tan 30 degree equals to P by B. 1 by root 3 equals to CB divided by AB. 1 by root 3 equals to 80 divided by X plus Y. So X plus Y equals to 80 root 3 equals to 80 into, put the value of root 3 which is 1.732. You will get, if you multiply you will get 138.56 meter. That means 138.56 meter is the distance from A to B, which is X plus Y. Now another triangle. In triangle DBC, now angle is 40 degree, which is not standard, use cot theta. Cot 40 degree equals to B by P. I have told you yesterday you will not get value of cot 40 degree in log table. So ultimately you have to convert this into tan. That we have done in class 9 by using complementary angle. Cot 90 degree minus 50 degree. To get 40 degree you have to subtract 50 degree equals to Y by 80. Now after converting cot you will get tan. So tan 50 degree equals to Y by 80. So to get the value of tan 50 degree you have to use log table. So you will get tan 50 degree means, okay, you will use log table. Tan 50 degree means 1.1918. Tan 50 degree means 1.1918. 1.1918 into 80 equals to Y. You will get 95.354. 95.354. So 95.354 is the value of Y. Now X plus Y equals to 138.56. X plus, put the value of Y, which is 95.354 equals to 138.56. X equals to 138.56 minus 95.354 equals to 43.216 meter, which is the answer. Okay, now next question. Question number 3. Question number 3. Two people standing on the same side. Again, this is the key point. Same side of a tower in a straight line with it. Measures the angle of elevation of the tower 25 degree and 50 degree. Here in both the angles are not standard. Just remember one thing, today's first question, both the angles were standard angle, 30 degree and 60 degree. Second question, one of the angle was 30 degree, which is standard, and second question is 40 degree, which is not standard angle, and third question is 25 degree and 50 degree. Now always remember, if it is not standard angle, you have to use log table, and log table you will get in exam. Two people standing on the same side, again diagrams are same. Here there is no depression, that means this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. The first angle is 25 degree and the second angle is 50 degree. Height is 70. So you have to find out again X. So if CD is X, DB is Y. So total distance is X plus Y. Again there are two right angle triangle, ABC and ABD. So first take in triangle ABC. In triangle ABC, cot 25 degree equals to B by P, because opposite of tan is cot. If tan is P by B, cot will be B by P. Now cot 90 degree minus 65. To get 25 degree, you have to subtract 65, because if you add these two, you have to get 90 degree, equals to X plus Y divided by 70. So after converting cot, you will get tan. So tan 65 equals to X plus Y divided by 70. Find out the value of tan 65. Tan 65, 2.1445. 2.1445 into 70 equals to X plus Y. If you multiply these two, you will get 150.115 equals to X plus Y. Now, second triangle. In triangle ABD. In triangle ABD, again next angle is 50 degree. Cot 50 degree is equal to B by P. Again you convert this cot into tan. Cot 90 degree minus 40 degree equals to Y by 70. So tan 40 degree equals to Y divided by 70. Again similarly you use log table to get the value of tan 40 degree. You will get 0.8391. 0.8391 is the value of tan 40 degree from the log table. Into 70 equals to Y. You will get 58.732. 58.732 is the value of Y. Now X plus Y equals to 150.115. So X plus, put the value of Y, 58.732 equals to 150.115. X equals to 150.115 minus 58.732. You'll get 91.378 meters. Okay, now next question. Question number 4. Question number 4. A man observes the angle of elevation on the top of a building to be 30 degree. He walks towards it in a horizontal line through its base. On covering 60 meters, the angle of elevation changes to 60 degree. Find the height of the building correct to the nearest meter. Here diagram is same. The only difference is distance is given, you have to find out height. Suppose this is ground, this is height. If you join it, you will get 90 degree. This is A this is B, and this is C. A man observes the angle of elevation of the top of a building. That means from here, this is 30 degree. 30 degree. He walks towards it in a horizontal line through its base on covering 60 meter. That means from here, he covered 60 meter, and the next angle is 60 degree. 60 degree. A, B, C, D. That means the distance from C to D is 60 meter. You have to find out height. If this is 60 meter, you can take this y, then total distance is 60 plus y. Again, here there are two right angle triangle, A, B, C, and triangle A, B, D. So first take triangle A, B, C. This is number 4. In triangle ABC, tan 30 degree equals to P by B. 1 by root 3 equals to perpendicular means AB, base means BC. So 1 by root 3 equals to H divided by 60 plus Y. Cross multiply it, you will get root 3H equals to 60 plus Y. H equals to 60 plus Y divided by root 3. This is equation 1. After that, in triangle ABD, tan 60 degree equals to P by B. Root 3 equals to AB divided by BD. Root 3 equals to H divided by Y. So cross multiply it, root 3Y equals to H. This is equation 2. Now from equation 1 and equation 2 we get, write equation 1, H equals to 60 plus Y divided by root 3. Now what is the value of H in equation 2? Root 3Y. Substitute here. Root 3y equals to 60 plus y divided by root 3. So root 3 into root 3 is 3. 3y equals to 60 plus y. 3y, bring this side, minus y equals to 60. 2y equals to 60, y equals to 30. Still height is unknown. Now to find height, you have two equations. Either you take this equation or this equation, it's up to you. Whichever is easy, you do that. Here, this one is easy. So h equals to root 3y. H equals to 1.732 into 30. If you multiply it, you will get 51.96 meter. And correct to the nearest means answer will be 52 meter. Okay, now same question, number 5. Number 5, everything is same. The calculation part will be difficult in this number 5. The shadow of a vertical tower on the level ground increases by 10 meter. When the altitude of the sun changes from 45 degree to 30 degree, find the height of the tower. Suppose this is A, this is B, and this is C. You have to find out height. And the first angle is 30 degree, and the second angle is 45 degree. This is D. Now, the shadow of the vertical tower on the level ground increases by 10 meter means the distance from C to D is 10 meter, and again this is unknown, we can take as y. Then the total distance will be again 10 plus y. Again here also there are two right angle triangle ABC and ABD. So first I am taking in triangle ABC. ABC tan 30 degree equals to P by B. 1 by root 3 equals to H divided by 10 plus y. So H equals to 10 plus y divided by root 3. This is equation 1. Now in triangle ABD, tan 45 degree equals to P by B. 1 equals to P means perpendicular, which is H, and B means Y. So Y is equal to H. This is equation 2. Now, what is equation 1? H equals to 10 plus Y divided by root 3. So what is the value of H in equation 2? Y, right here. Y equals to 10 plus Y divided by root 3. Cross multiply it. Root 3 equals to 10 plus Y. Now bring this side. Root 3 minus Y is equal to 10. If Y is common, then root 3 minus 1 is equal to 10. Therefore, Y equals to 10 divided by root 3 minus 1. Now you have to rationalize. So Y is equal to 10 divided by root 3 minus 1 into multiplied by opposite of denominator, which is root 3 plus 1. Now solve it. 10 root 3 plus 10 divided by a minus b. A plus b is a square minus b square. Now 10 into, put the value of root 3, 1.732 plus 10 divided by root 3 square means these two will get cancelled. Now 3 minus 1 is 2. Now 10 into 1.732 means 17.32 plus 10 divided by 2. If you add it, you will get 27.32 divided by 2 divided, you will get 13.66 meter, which is the value of Y. Y means distance. But according to this question, you have to find out height. Now, what is the second equation? Second equation is Y equals to H. It means, second equation is Y equals to H. It means 13.66 is also the value of H. Okay. Now, question number 6, today's last question. By the way, all these questions are ICSE question. The first question is ICSE 2009, second question is ICSE 2012, third question is ICSE 2004, fourth question is ICSE 2011, this is ICSE 2002 and 2006, and the last question is ICSE 2019. Now, everything is same, only the values are different. Height is unknown, like previous question. Here, A, B, C, D. This angle is 45 degree and this angle is 60 degree, and the distance from C to D is, he walks towards it in a horizontal line through its base on covering 20 meter, means this is 20, again this is Y, total distance is 20 plus Y, again you have to find out height. Again there are two right angle triangle. In triangle ABC and triangle ABD. So first I am taking question number 6. First I am taking triangle ABD. In triangle ABD, ABC tan 45 degree equals to P by B. Tan 45 means 1. Perpendicular means AB, whose value is H, divided by base. Base means CV, whose value is 20 plus Y. So therefore, H equals to 20 plus Y, which is equation 1. After that, in triangle ABD, tan 60 degree equals to P by B. Tan 60 degree means root 3. H divided by Y. So root 3Y equals to H, which is equation 2. Now, what is equation 1? H equals to 20 plus Y. H equals to 20 plus Y. What is the value of H? Root 3Y equals to 20 plus Y. Root 3Y minus Y equals to 20. If you take Y common, minus 1 equals to 20. Y equals to 20 divided by root 3 minus 1. Again, you have to rationalize. Okay, so multiply the opposite of denominator which is root 3 plus 1. Now y equals to 20 into root 3 plus 1 divided by root 3 minus 1, root 3 plus 1. Again a plus b, a minus b, which is a square minus b square. Now this numerator you copy as it is. It will be easy for you. This and this will get cancelled. So 3 minus 1 is 2. Now cancel these two. Therefore 10 root 3 plus 10. So 10 into 1.732 plus 10. 17.32 plus 10. 27.32 meter, which is the value of y. Now height. To find height, you have two equations. One is h equals to root 3y and one is h equals to 20 plus y. Which one is easy? Obviously here equation 1 is easy. So h equals to 20 plus y. 20 plus 27.32, 47.32 meter. This is the answer. This much for today. Thank you very much. Please revise whatever I have done yesterday and today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to learn about chemical bonding, as I have started from the earlier class with you. So first, before I start the second part of chemical bonding, let us see what we learned in the previous class. So if you remember, in our previous class we learned about the definition of chemical bond, cause of formation of chemical bond, and types of chemical bond. After that, we learn about electrovalent bond definition, what does electrovalency means, and some example of electrovalent compound. Then we learn about the definition of covalent bond, what does covalency means, along with its some examples. After that, I taught you about the properties of electrovalent compound, followed by the property of covalent compound. And I have said you to remember the property of both, to remember the difference between them. After that, we learn some reasoning questions and answer related to electrovalent compound and covalent compound. Then we learn about the Lewis structure for electrovalent compound like NaCl, like magnesium chloride, calcium oxide. Then for covalent compound, we learn for hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, for hydrogen chloride, for water, for ammonia, for methane, for carbon tetrachloride. So today we are going to learn about is type of covalent compound. Do remember, there is no type of electrovalent compound, but there is type of covalent compound. And there are two types of covalent compound. One is called polar covalent compound. The other is called non-polar covalent compound. Do remember, students? There are two types of covalent compound. One is polar covalent compound, the other is non-polar covalent compound. Okay? I have given the notes out here, but before we discuss that, let us see this. Okay. So first of all, I like to discuss with you is about polar covalent compound. So before I give you its definition, I like to give you its example. So the example of polar covalent compounds is hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and many others, but I have given you only 3 examples here. Now do remember, inside H2 there are 2 hydrogen, inside O2 there are 2 oxygen, and inside N2 there are 2 nitrogen. Since the valency of hydrogen is 1, so there will be 1 bond between them. Oxygen valency is 2, so there will be 2 bond in between them. Nitrogen valency is 3, so there will be 3 bond in between them. And do remember, in each bond there will be 2 electrons of each elements. In each bond there will be 2 electrons of each element. In each bond there will be 2 electrons, 1 each of each element. Now, the nucleus of hydrogen will try to pull the electron of this hydrogen towards itself. Similarly, the nucleus of this hydrogen will try to pull the electron of this hydrogen towards itself. Same case here also. The nucleus of this oxygen will try to pull the electron of this oxygen towards itself, because plus minus there will be attraction. The nucleus which is positively charged of this nitrogen will try to pull the electron of this nitrogen towards itself, which is negatively charged. Due to opposite pole there will be attraction. But since the elements are same, therefore there will be no electronegative difference between them. As a result, sharing of electron will occur equally between them. Therefore, charge will not develop. Therefore, we call them non-polar covalent compound. Okay, therefore we call them as what? Non-polar covalent compound. Sorry, first we'll discuss about non-polar, then we'll discuss about polar. So, since the sharing of electron takes place equally between the nuclei, in singular we call nucleus, in plural we call nuclei. Since the sharing of electron between the nuclei of these two elements will be equal, because there is no electronegative difference, as a result electron will be shared equally, therefore charge will not develop, and if the charge does not develop we call them non-polar covalent compound. So these are the examples of non-polar covalent compound where the sharing of electron has occurred equally because there is no electronegative difference between the elements. Now we will see next one, and that is polar covalent compound. Polar covalent compound. So again, before I give you its definition, let us see example of it. So for the example of it, I like to give you the example like hydrogen chloride, water, formula H2O, and ammonia NH3. Now in HCl, there is H and Cl. Inside water, there is O and 2H. And inside ammonia, there is 1N and 3H. Whichever is single, keep it in the center. Since here in the formula nitrogen is single, keep it in the center, distribute the 3 hydrogen in the 3 sides. So between H and Cl there is HCl, in water there is 1O and 2H, and in ammonia there is 1N and 3H. Now hydrogen and chlorine, both of their valency is 1, so there will be 1 bond in between them. Hydrogen valency is 1, so 1 bond. Hydrogen valency is 1, so 1 bond, whereas oxygen valency is 2, therefore you can see there are 2 bonds for oxygen. In ammonia, hydrogen valency is 1, so there will be 1 bond. Hydrogen valency will be 1, so 1 bond. Hydrogen valency is 1, so 1 bond. But nitrogen valency is 3, therefore for it you can see there are 3 bonds. And as I said you earlier, to form a bond, 2 electrons are required. To form a bond, 2 electrons are required. To form a bond, 2 electrons are required. Now, in this case, if you see, the elements are not same. They are different element. Therefore, there will be electronegative difference. And do remember, chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. Therefore, the nucleus of chlorine will easily pull the electron of hydrogen towards itself and shows more electronegativity character. As a result, it will develop small negative charge, and since it is losing, so it will develop small positive charge. And if the charge is developed, we call them polar. In this case, if you see, there is no electronegative difference, sharing will be equal, charge will not develop, so we call them non-polar. Whereas in this case, there is different element, there is electronegative difference, sharing will be unequal because chlorine will share more part of the electron being more electronegative than hydrogen. As a result, the charge will develop. And if the charge is developed, we call them as polar. Similarly here, again oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen. Therefore, the electron of hydrogen will be towards oxygen because oxygen will pull the electron of hydrogen. Similarly, this electron of hydrogen will be towards oxygen. Reason, oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen, so the nucleus of oxygen will pull the electron of hydrogen towards itself. Since this hydrogen is losing, therefore it will develop small positive charge. Small positive charge. Losing means small positive charge, and this symbol means del, and this symbol del stands for small. So small positive charge, it will develop because it is losing. Now, how many positive charge you see here? 2. So oxygen will develop 2 negative charge, small negative charge. So always remember the number of plus and minus should be always equal. So 1 plus, so 1 minus. 2 plus, so 2 minus. Okay, now we go to this one. Again here, nitrogen is more electronegative than hydrogen. Therefore, the electron of hydrogen will be towards nitrogen because nitrogen will pull the electron of hydrogen towards itself being more electronegative than hydrogen. Here also, the electron of hydrogen will be towards nitrogen, electron of hydrogen will be towards nitrogen. Reason, nitrogen is more electronegative than hydrogen, is more electronegative than hydrogen. So since hydrogen is losing electron, it will develop small positive charge, and that small means del means small, and this will also develop small positive charge. So how many positive charge it has been developed now? You can see there are 3 positive charge. So this nitrogen will develop 3 negative charge because the number of positive and negative charge has to be equal. So if you see in water, there are 2 positive charge and 2 negative charge. As a result, we call it as dipolar compound. Why dipolar? Because there is 2 in chemistry means di, so it is called dipolar, and usually we use water as a solvent. So therefore it is known by the name dipolar solvent. So give one example of dipolar solvent. It's water. Because of 2 positive and 2 negative charge, it is tripolar, it is monopolar. So now see here how to segregate them. So if in a molecule there is no electronegative difference, sharing of electron will be equal between the nucleus of the 2 elements. In plural we call nuclei. As a result, charge will not develop, and if the charge will not develop, we call nonpolar. But if there is electronegative difference between the 2 elements, sharing of electron will be unequal between the nuclei of 2 elements, whereby charge will develop, and if the charge will develop, we call them as polar. So these 3 are the examples of nonpolar covalent compound, and these are the 3 examples of polar covalent compound. Now, how to remember this in easy way? Because many students face confusion. Polar, non-polar, okay, class 10 are not so like well-defined knowledge students, I feel, because in higher studies they learn much more about it. So to eradicate that confusion, do remember from today this way. I think everyone has played tug of war. So now you only tell me, students, if a tug of war is played between 2 persons of equal strength, can you say before the match who will win? Because they are of equal strength. So that can be the example of non-polar. Tug of war played between the 2 persons of equal strength. But what if a tug of war is played between the 2 persons of unequal strength? Before the match, only you can predict who is going to win. So this is the tug of war played between 2 persons of unequal strength, whereby before the match only you can predict who is going to win. So here who is stronger? Chlorine. So chlorine will pull the more part of the rope than hydrogen. But here both are of equal strength, so the rope will be shared equally. So do remember, if charge is not developed, we call them non-polar. If the charge is developed, we call them polar. So to be non-polar, there should not be electronegative difference. But to be polar, there has to be electronegative difference. But there are some exceptional cases like methane, formula CH4, carbon tetrachloride, CCl4, carbon dioxide, CO2. These are also the example of non-polar covalent compound. Now you may be surprised. So these 3 we understood, even these all we understood. And in this, if you see, there is electronegative difference because this one is carbon, one is hydrogen, one is carbon, one is chlorine, one is carbon, there is oxygen. So that means there is electronegative difference. So why they are not in the example of polar? Why they are in the example of non-polar? As I said, it is an exceptional case for you in your class 10 standard. The reason you will get it in the higher studies. So when you reach in class 11, the reason is there for these 3. So for the time being, you do remember that these 3, they have electronegative difference, but yet they come under non-polar covalent compound. Reason is there in 11 science syllabus of chemistry. For the time being, you remember it as an exceptional cases. And I'm leaving one clue to you. Just while ago what I said you. No electronegative difference, non-polar. Electronegative difference, polar. And there was electronegative difference, then why non-polar? So most probably there is some another criteria to determine whether the compound is polar or non-polar, which is unseen to you right now, that you will see in the higher studies. So for the timing, you remember them as the example of what? Non-polar, though they have electronegative difference. So this is all about polar and non-polar. So I repeat again one more time to you. Do remember, non-polar covalent compound are those in which the sharing of electron will be equal between the 2 elements, and to form such compound there should not be electronegative difference. And polar are those in which sharing of electron will be unequal between the 2 nuclei of 2 elements, and there has to be electronegative difference to be polar. Okay, and you can see out here now, polar covalent compound, these are those compound in which sharing of electrons takes place unequally between the nuclei. In singular we call nucleus, in plural we call nuclei. Of two elements. To form such compound there should be electronegative difference between the two elements, and the examples are HCl, water, ammonia and sulfur dioxide. Note, due to unequal sharing of electrons, small charge is developed represented by the symbol del. As a result, the compounds are called polar. And non-polar are those covalent compounds in which sharing of electron takes place equally between the nuclei of two elements. To form such compound there should not be electronegative difference. Example, nitrogen, oxygen and hydrogen. Exceptional cases are carbon dioxide, methane and carbon tetrachloride, though there is electronegative difference in these three, but yet we put in the example of non-polar. The reason is in 11 science, as I said you. For the time being, you remember it as an exceptional case. Now a very small trick to you to remember how to remember polar and non-polar. The clue is here. No electronegative difference between the elements. No electronegative difference between the elements. Non-polar. Electronegative difference, polar. So now we are going to remember this way. No. So no. No, 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 no. So po. Means no electronegative difference, non-polar. Electronegative difference, polar. Means no, so no, 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 so po. What is the meaning of that? No, so no, 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 so po. Means no electronegative difference, non-polar. If there is electronegative difference, it will be polar. Okay, now we will see some reasoning questions and answer from the topic we learned just a while ago about polar and non-polar, which has come in your ICSE board exam. Number 1, HCl is a polar covalent compound. Explain. If you see in HCl, H is also non-metal, Cl is also non-metal. Therefore, between two non-metals we get covalent bond. We see covalent bond. And between H and Cl there is electronegative difference. As a result, sharing of electron will be unequal and charge will develop. Therefore, it is a polar molecule, we say. Next, methane is a non-polar covalent compound. Explain. Now, many students get confused in this question. This question has come once in ICSE, which was not supposed to be there actually. Reason? Because it comes under the exceptional case. But how to explain? Because the answer is in 11 science, as I said you. So for your standard, do remember this way. You do say that carbon, hydrogen are different elements, but their electronegativity value is same. As a result, sharing of electron will be equal, charge will not develop, therefore they are non-polar covalent compound. Now the last one. Name a covalent molecule which has triple bond. You have to name a covalent compound which has triple bond. And as I have said you earlier, that inside N2 there are 2 N, and since nitrogen valency is 3, so there will be 3 bonds, and this is known by the name triple bond. So name a covalent molecule which has triple bond. The answer will be nitrogen. Okay, now we will see another topic called lone pair or inert pair. So what is the meaning of lone pair and inert pair? Okay, so to explain lone pair and inert pair to you, I am taking one example out here of water. Okay, you know that water formula is H2O. Inside H2O, we single oxygen, so make it in the center. And how many H is there? 2, you make it in the 2 places. Hydrogen valency is 1, so 1 bond. Hydrogen valency is 1, so 1 bond. And oxygen valency is 2, so 2 bond you can see. This is the structural formula of water. Hydrogen has 1 electron in the outermost shell. Hydrogen has 1 electron in the outermost shell because its atomic number is 1, so configuration is 1. Whereas atomic number of oxygen is 8, so the configuration will be 2, 6. So therefore it has 6 electron in the outermost shell. Out of 6 electron, 2 electron of oxygen is taking part in the bond formation with hydrogen. Out of 6, 2 of them are taking part in the bond formation with hydrogen. That means how many are left? 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is the structural formula of water. Hydrogen gets duplet by 1 electron of oxygen, hydrogen gets duplet by 1 electron of oxygen, and oxygen is octet out here by the 2 electron of hydrogen. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Now you can see out of 6 electron of oxygen, 2 of them are taking part in the bond formation with hydrogen, whereas the other 2 pair are not taking part in the bond formation. So these electrons which is not taking part in the bond formation, pair means 2. So 1 pair, 2 pair. So how many pair of oxygen is not taking part in bond formation? 2 of them. Therefore those pair of electron is known by the name lone pair or inert pair. So what is lone pair or inert pair? These are those pair of electrons which does not take part in the bond formation. And do remember, oxygen has 2 lone pair, 1, 2 lone pair, which does not take part in the bond formation. Similarly, in nitrogen N2, as I said you, nitrogen in N2 there are 2 N and the valency is 3, so there will be 3 bonds. And you know that to form each bond, 2 electrons are required. And atomic number of nitrogen is 7, so the configuration is 2, 5. So it has 5 electrons in the outermost shell, but out of 5, only 3 of them are taking part in the bond formation. So how many is left? 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means out of 5 electrons of each nitrogen, only 3 of them are taking part in the bond formation, whereas 1 pair of electron is not taking part in the bond formation. Means these are the lone pairs of nitrogen. So do remember, students, oxygen always has 2 lone pair and nitrogen has 1 lone pair. Now if we go with the chlorine, Cl2, the formula, again in Cl2 there are 2 chlorine and both are monovalent, so there will be 1 bond in between them, and to form a bond 2 electrons are required. Now recall the atomic number of chlorine. Chlorine atomic number is 17. So the configuration will be 2, 8, 7. So it has 7 electrons in the outermost shell. Okay, since it has 7 electrons in the outermost shell, out of which only 1 is taking part in the bond formation, out of 7, 1 is taking part. So how many is left? 6. So similarly, out of 7, 1 is taking part. How many is left? 6. So that means only 1 electron of each chlorine will take part in bond formation, whereas this pair of electron does not take part in bond formation and they are regarded as lone pair. So lone pair of electrons are those electrons which does not take part in bond formation, which is also known by the name inert pair. And do remember, chlorine 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and chlorine has how many lone pair? 3 lone pair. Chlorine has 3 lone pair of electrons, and chlorine is one of the halogen. It comes under halogen group, and in chemistry we represent halogen by the symbol X. Okay, so now tell me, nitrogen has how many lone pair? 1. Oxygen has how many lone pair? 2. And your halogen has how many? 3. Halogen means chlorine here. It may be fluorine, bromine, iodine, all are halogen. All halogen will always have 3 lone pair. Nitrogen will have 1 lone pair and oxygen will have 2 lone pair. And this has been asked in your ICSE board exam. Now how to remember it in an easy way? Remember this. Okay, my dialogue is very simple out here. Do say whenever the lone pair is asked, always say no X, 1, 2, 3. No X, 1, 2, 3 means nitrogen always has 1 lone pair in its compound. Oxygen will have mostly 2 lone pair and halogen has 3. Halogen has how many? 3. Now you can see out here this one. Lone pair of electron or inert pair means same. The pair of electrons which do not take part in the bond formation is called lone pair of electrons. And do remember, nitrogen has 1 lone pair, oxygen has 2 lone pair, and halogen, that is chlorine, has 3 lone pair. So remember the dialogue. No X, 1, 2, 3. No X, 1, 2, 3 means nitrogen has 1, oxygen has 2, halogen has 3. Halogen means fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, all of them has 3 lone pair. Okay. Now we'll see one question related to that which has come in your board exam. The question was like this. Among the following, which does not have lone pair? The question was, among the following, which does not have lone pair? These 3 options was given to you. I repeat my question. Among the following, who does not have lone pair? The question was like that in your ICSE. Now how to give the answer? Many students have learned my trick, that is no X 1 2 3, and what they have observed is no NOx. X means halogen, halogen means chlorine, NOx. All of them has lone pair. But the question was which does not have lone pair. So if you see out here who is single in this compound, oxygen is the central element. Who is single here? Carbon, the central element. Who is single out here? Nitrogen. So you have to say with respect to central element. And you know that nitrogen has one lone pair, oxygen has two, halogen has three. But here halogen is not the central atom. Carbon is the central atom, which does not have lone pair. So among the following, which does not have lone pair in these three? The answer was carbon tetrachloride. So if the same question comes in 2021, do remember this question and the answer will be carbon tetrachloride. Okay? Okay, now we go to another topic called coordinate bond. Okay, so far I have explained it in the chemical bonding chapter. We have learned about two types of bond, that is electrovalent bond, covalent bond. For electrovalent bond there is no type. For covalent there are two types, polar and non-polar. I discussed with some question answers with you. Now the last bond in it is this one called coordinate bond. Okay, it has three names. We even call it by the name coordinate bond or coordinate covalent bond or dative bond. Three names, but the thing is same. Whether you say coordinate bond, coordinate covalent bond or dative bond, all three means same. Now let me explain you this. Okay, Mr. A is electron rich and Mr. B is electron poor. Those who are rich, I am highlighting its electron because it is rich in electron, and there is no electron with B, so it is electron poor. So those who are electron rich, they are usually electron donor, and those who are electron poor, they are usually electron deficient. As a result, they accept electron from others, so they are electron acceptor. Okay, A is one of the element I am taking in a general form, which is electron rich, highlighting the electrons, and since it is rich in electrons, so it donates electron. Whereas B is electron poor, therefore it is electron deficient, so it accepts electron from others. Now, since B is poor in electron but A is what? Rich, therefore B will request A to share its electron. Okay, and when A shares the electron with B, the bond will be like this, the 1 2 arrow towards B. Now look out here, why arrow sign? When both will contribute 1 electron each, that is called covalent. I repeat again, if an element one will lose, the other will gain, you get electrovalent bond. If sharing occurs in which both will contribute, sharing occurs in which both will contribute is covalent, but the sharing in which only one will contribute is coordinate. I repeat again, sharing in which both the elements will contribute, covalent. Sharing in which only one element will contribute, that is coordinate bond or coordinate covalent bond. Why the word is there covalent in between? Because it is not a covalent bond, but still the word is here called covalent. Reason, here also sharing is occurring, therefore it's covalent. But both are not contributing. If both are contributing, it's covalent. But one of them is contributing, that is called coordinate covalent bond or coordinate bond or dative bond. And you should represent it by the arrow sign. And arrow should be towards the one to whom the electron has been given to share. Towards the one to which the electron has been given to share. So to remember, in Lewis structure, we represent electrovalent bond by a bent arrow sign, covalent bond by the box sign, and coordinate bond by the arrow sign, in which arrow should be towards that element towards which the electron has been given. So coordinate bond is usually formed between electron donor and electron acceptor. It is formed between electron rich and electron poor elements. Now another example, you can see ammonia. Ammonia formula is NH3 and this is called boron trifluoride. Ammonia and boron trifluoride. If you expand ammonia, we write like this, NH3. And boron trifluoride, if you want to write, we write like this, BF3. Okay. Now if you see out here, to form a bond, 2 electrons are required. And do remember, nitrogen has one lone pair with it. And again, to form a bond, 2 electrons are required. But boron does not have any lone pair of electron with it. Now, since nitrogen is rich in electron. You can see there are 2 electrons extra with it. Boron does not have. Now boron in total has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it requires 2 more electrons to become octet. Whereas nitrogen is already octet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. Nitrogen is octet but boron is not. Therefore boron will request nitrogen to share the electrons. Okay, and when this nitrogen 2 electron is shared between both, in this case both becomes octet. Nitrogen will be also octet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Your boron will be also octet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. So both of them become octet. But why the arrow towards boron? Because boron is getting the electrons of nitrogen to be shared. So coordinate bond can be formed between electron rich element or electron rich molecule and electron deficient element or electron deficient molecule. So if you see there, what I have written is, these are those covalent compound bond in which the shared pair of electron is contributed by only one element, not both, only one element in a molecule. Such bond is formed between electron rich element or molecule. Element example is A, molecule is your ammonia, and electron deficient element example is B, or molecule is boron trifluoride. And this bond is represented by arrow sign, which has been shown out here to you. Okay, the property of coordinate bond compound is intermediate between electrovalent compound and covalent compound. Now this is very important to remember by you. Last class I said you electrovalent compound has high melting point and boiling point, and covalent compound has low. But what about coordinate compound formed by coordinate bond? So their property lies between electrovalent and covalent. So if electrovalent compound has high melting point, boiling point, and covalent compound has low, the intermediate between those two is the property of coordinate compound. That means they have higher boiling point than covalent but lower boiling point than electrovalent. And some of the example of these compounds are given down. Okay, one is ammonium ion. The formula of ammonium ion is NH4 plus. One example in which we see coordinate bond. The other one is hydronium ion, formula H3O plus. The other two are ammonium chloride and ammonium hydroxide. In these 4 we see coordinate bond. There are many other compounds in which we see such bond. For the timing in your syllabus, just remember 4. So what are the compounds inside which or ions inside which we see coordinate bond? Are hydronium ion, formula H3O plus, ammonium ion, NH4 plus, ammonium chloride, NH4Cl, and ammonium hydroxide, NH4OH. Now, this much for today. In tomorrow's class, I am going to explain you the Lewis structure of these 4. In tomorrow's class, we are going to see the Lewis structure of hydronium ion, ammonium chloride, and ammonium hydroxide, followed by some question answers. And I'll try to give my best to wrap this chapter by my next class. So stay home, be safe. Thank you very much for today. Good afternoon, dear students. We'll continue with genetics, and yesterday we have finished few aspects of Mendelian theory. Now we'll discuss some of the terminologies related to Mendelism. First, the terminology come across, that is factor. What do you mean by a factor? Mendel used the term factor, which is a modern term gene. That means during that time, since the tools of biology was not good enough. When I say tools of biology, the various materials that you require in order to pursue the study, like microscope, dissection set, and so many other sophisticated material that you require during that time, it was not so good enough. So, and also Mendel did not had the idea of meiosis. Therefore, he used the term called as factor, and this word factor has been replaced by the modern terminology that is called as gene. So factor is nothing, but you have to understand it is a gene by which Mendelian used this term. Another term come across, that is character. What do you mean by a character? Character out here means any observable features, the character of a living
organism, tall, short, dark, color, okay, any type of color, any type of morphological structure that the organism exhibit. Okay, that is features which are inherited. That means any type of character that is passed from one generation to another generation. Features which are inherited. I have used the term inherited. Inherited means the character that is passed from parents to the offspring. When I say offspring, then it means the coming up children, the babies. Okay, the parents, when they give birth to a child, they are referred as offspring. So which are inherited from one generation to the next. What type of character is carried from one generation to another? It is called as character. Now, another one, trait, the alternative form of character. Suppose, say for example, when I talk about height, then the person may be 7 feet, 6 feet, 5.8, any type of. So here you see that height, when I talk about height, so many. When I talk about color, then you see that dark complexion, light complexion, fair, brown, tan, so many complexion you will come across. These are the alternative form of character. Character can be innumerable depending upon what type of organism we are talking about. The alternative form of character which are inherited, you will come across. If you look at your ancestors, you see that the ancestors were quite huge enough, big enough, tall enough, stout enough. Again, you find that after each and every generation, there is some type of morphological changes in their offspring. These morphological changes that is brought in the organism, that is carried from one generation to another generation, you use the term called as trait. Now, the next term that is called as allele. Now, what do you mean by allele? Alternative form of same gene occupying the same position on the chromosome and show some character and show some characteristic. Like, take for example, when we talk about chromosome, then you will understand that chromosome means like this. Now, take for instance, if I take one of this strand, okay, take for instance, this is A, that means the allele for A will be small a. If I say this is B, the allele for this B will be small b. If I say capital C, then here the allele for this capital C will be small c. Then similarly here D, then small d. That means it is the alternative form. So here suppose, say for example, if A represents height, if A represents height, B represents color, like that, you see that so many characters are present. So the alternative form of these characters are present on the strand of this chromosome. This alternative form of this chromosome is only called as allele. So allele is the abbreviated form of allelomorphs. Allelomorphs. Okay, so here when I say allele of same type, morphs when I say the morphological structure. So if I talk about height, then here you see that where will we find this chromosome of height? We will find in this particular part of it. That means if you talk in terms of height, then we are getting a special location. This location of this gene, you use the term called as locus, L-O-C-U-S, locus. And various such type of gene are present on the strand of this chromosome. Plural form, we use the term called as loci. Locus is singular and loci is plural form. So take for example here, certain types of instruction, gene instruction are there for a height. There are certain instruction for color. That means where will you find that instruction? That instruction is found in a particular part of this chromosome or DNA, and that location you use the term called as locus, or you call the term called as, if it is plural, you use the term called as loci. So allele when I say, then you have to understand that it is the alternative form. Take for example, if I another example, T denoting tallness, then is allele, small t denotes dwarfness. Take for example, here this area denotes tallness, then this area denotes dwarfness. So the allele for tallness will be the dwarfness. Similarly, the allele for here black can be white, or it can be some other color, depending upon the type of organism, what character we are talking about. Now, come to the next part, phenotype. Phenotype means that in an organism, by a naked eye, that means when you see with your eye, not with the help of microscope. When I say naked eye, then with your eye it is visible. Then these characters which is observed, which is seen by your eye, observable features, okay, you use the term called as phenotype. Phenotype. It refers to physical appearance, tall, short, stout, okay, physical appearance of an organism which are genetically controlled. And you have to understand the key word out here is observable features, the feature that you observe through your eye. That means with your eye you mark it out that whether it is tall or short, stout, or very much dwarf, red, pink, white, whichever color by your eye you are able to see. Then those terminology you use the term called as phenotype. Like I have written out here example like tall, short, and so many other characters. Another one you call it as genotype. When I say genotype, that means genetically for tall, genetically for short, how will you represent? So it refers to the genetic constitution. That means there is a genetical code for tallness, there is a genetical code for dwarfness. So how will you represent? How will you represent? Then you say this tallness will be, pure tall will be represented by capital T, capital T. Similarly, pure dwarfness, an organism is purely dwarf, whether it is plant or whether it is animal, you represent by small t, small t. Or whether the organism is of two characters, the two characters has come, that means it does not resemble of pure parents, then you represent by some other alphabet. So way you represent by the term that has been taken out here like capital T, small t, this is genetically you call it as genotype. Another one, you come across the another word that is F1. It refers to first filial generation produced as a result of cross between two pure breeding parental forms. I have used the term called as pure. What do you mean by pure? Try to understand out here. Take for instance, I have taken a plant which is tall, okay, which is tall, pure tall. So when I say pure tall, for last 10 generation, whichever the plant used to exist out here, from here, whichever the seed has been produced for last 10 generation are all tall. When it is all tall for last 10 generation, then I will call it as pure. Similarly, another plant, okay. Take for example, there is a plant of the same species, but it is dwarf, very short, dwarf plant. That means for last 10 generation, the plant obtained, this offspring that has been obtained from this plant, it has been obtained 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, it has been obtained for 10 generation, it is purely dwarf. That means you are not getting any other form. Then you are representing by t, small t, small t. So that means the allele for tall is pure, is capital T, capital T. For pure dwarf is small t, small t. That means here you have to understand, when I take a pure parents, parental generation, this is P2, second parent, this is first parent. It can be either male, it can be either female, okay? Or Say for example, I take the pollen grains from here, I transfer it to this plant. Or I take the pollen grains of this plant and I transfer to this plant. It can be anything. So, or you have to understand from these two plants, whatever the result I get, this here result, that means this first result that I am getting, first generation of these two plants from the pure parents, pure tall, pure short, whatever I get the result, this one you call it as F1 generation or first filial generation. So it refers to the first filial generation. Now you see that here I have written capital T, small t. Now here capital T, small t, what it is? We will not understand. So for this you need to have a clear terminology of this. Let's try to see the next part, that is F2. Now F2 out here represents, it refers to the second filial generation. That means from F1, after that whichever generation I get, that means the plant will fertilize. How it will fertilize, whether it is self, whether it is cross, or by any way, whatever the cross after that breeding, whatever I get the result, you call it as second generation. Now in that second generation, how will I describe this F2? It refers to the second filial generation produced as a result of self-cross between offspring. Now you see that this is the offspring. This one is the offspring of the first one. That means if I self-pollinate it, when I say self-pollinate it, now you see that here you see this is the flower. In this flower, you see the anther and the pollen grain. If this, that means of the same plant, of the same flower, when the pollen grains are transferred, then I use the term called as self-pollination. But suppose, say for example, if the cross takes place between this A and B, that means between this plant and this plant, then I use the term called as cross-pollination. That means your F1 generation is cross-pollination. Your F2 generation which I am getting is self-pollination. That means in the same plant, same flower, when the pollination is taking place, the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma is taking place, I call it as what? Self-pollination. That means whichever from here the seed will be produced. Okay, after fertilization seed will be produced. These seeds will germinate into a plant. What type of plant do I obtain? That you call it as F2 generation. That means the plant obtained by self-pollination in the second generation, you call it as F2 generation. Now come to the next term, that is dominant. When two contrasting characters are brought together in a hybrid as a result of cross, the character appears in F1 generation are termed as dominant character. That means, now you see, yesterday I have discussed few of the terminology which was related as dominant and recessive. I had just shown you that how Mendel have taken the Pisum sativum and what are the 7 features, and in that column you must have seen I have written dominant and I have written recessive. You have to understand out here what do you mean by dominant and what do you mean by recessive. The character that gets expressed, okay, the character that gets expressed, meaning when it is getting expressed, what you are getting the plant, whether you are getting a tall plant or short plant, whether you are getting a red flower or white flower, any type of character that gets expressed in the first generation will be called as dominant. Like, take for example, here you take the P1, that is your first parent, then after that you see the dwarf plant, that is your P2. Now you see that if it is pure tall, then I am representing as capital T, capital T. Now dwarf plant, small t, small t. Now when this undergo pollination, fertilization takes place. Then after that, what you will get? You will get a plant that is capital T and small t. Always try to understand when there is a capital letter at the front. This you have to understand, it is dominant. That means what character came across? You have to understand capital T when it is coming, then you call it as dominant character. Take for example again this capital T, that means tall, small t, dwarf, capital T, small t. This is tall. But what type of tall? Hybrid tall you call it. Which tall you call it? Hybrid tall you call it. That means here I am getting a plant that is tall. What went away? Which character did not got expressed? That means here I will get number of seed. All the seed when they germinate into a plant. This seed when they germinate into a plant. All these plant are of same size. That means they are tall in nature. That means what expressed? Tall expressed. What did not express? Dwarf did not express. What do you call it? When it gets expressed, you call it as dominant. Another one, recessive. Character which remain masked in an offspring or it remains suppressed. Which character got suppressed? You see that this small t did not appear in the first generation. This small t did not appear in the first generation. That means when this character, the short did not appear, the plant appeared to be tall in nature. I use the term called as recessive in nature. What do I call it? Recessive in nature. Now, another term that is called as monohybrid. Mono means single. Mono means single. So here, when I take one character at a time, when I take one character at a time, one character at a time, when I say here I have taken tall and short. I have taken tall and short. So tall and short, it represents height. I have taken height as one character. This height as one character when I am taking at a time, then I call it as monohybrid. When one character is taken at a time, height, like say tall and dwarf, that is capital T, small t, small t. That means when I take one character at a time and the cross obtained from there, I use the term called as monohybrid. Another one, dihybrid. Di, the word di means, di means two. So here take for example, I have taken tall plant and I have taken red flower. Another one I have taken dwarf plant. Allele for tallness will be dwarfness. The allele for the red can be white. So I have taken small r. The allele for capital R will be smaller. So here what I have taken? This I have taken as height and this I have taken as color. Height, and color. I am taking two characters at a time. When I take two characters at a time, then I use the term called as dihybrid. When two characters are taken at a time, like height and color, then I use the term called as dihybrid. Now, another term called as homozygous. Homo means same. The word homo means same. Zygous, zygote, that means when the two reproductive cells fuse together, after fusion, it results in zygote. Pollen grain and the egg, ovule, when they fuse together, zygote will get formed. Sperm and ova, when they fuse together, zygote will get formed. So like that only you have to understand, when I say homozygous, pair of chromosome having similar alleles. Okay, pair of chromosome having similar alleles, that is T and T. That means in a strand of chromosome there will be T and T. Another strand of chromosome there will be T and T. So here when you take a pair of chromosome that has a similar alleles, then the term is called as homozygous. Similarly, heterozygous, individual two different alleles. Like take for example, here the gamete formed from this will be capital T, small t. So either the gamete will be either this capital T or either it will be small t. So that means a gamete Gamete, when I say reproductive cell, the reproductive cell will either have capital T or either it will have small t. Both of them together does not exist. So here, what is the terminology called out here? Individual having two different alleles, you use the term called as heterozygous. This two is heterozygous. T, capital T, small t is heterozygous. Now, another term, Punnett square. Now, here you see in this diagram, I have taken a plant, a tall plant or a short plant. Then after that, here you see that in F1 generation, F2 generation, I will get a plant. I will try to get a offspring which will be of different nature. How to get it? Okay, how to do it? Now, take for instance, this can be done by just drawing a square. So here, first of all, let's see the definition, Punnett square. Punnett square is a grid named after the name of a famous geneticist, that is Reginald C. Punnett. This square is used for demonstrating all possible combination. That means when I take a tall plant, short plant, then what type of character do I get obtain in F1, F2 generation, wherever, what is the possible combination. Okay, demonstrating all possible combination of gamete occurring during fertilization. When fertilization will take place, then what is the result of the offspring that can be obtained easily through Punnett square. So here on the board, I am just going to show to you all. Okay, now that Punnett square, how to represent it? First of all, here you see I have taken tall plant, short plant. Then after that, in the first, I got genotype, that is capital T, small t. Now, this, how can you represent it? Now, take for instance, this Punnett square, how you are going to draw? A vertical line, horizontal line. Now, this horizontal line, this line denotes male, vertical part, grid, that will denote female. Now, take for instance, capital T, small t, small t. Now, this t into this t, capital T, small t, this t into this t, capital T, small t, this t into this t, capital T, small t. Always try to write capital at the front. Small t, capital T, small t. Now, what is the resultant you see? Capital T, small t, capital T, small t. Now, here, how you have taken? Capital T is tall, small t is short or dwarf. Now, when the generation that is obtained, phenotypically you have taken a tall plant and a short plant. Now, here you are getting all heterozygous. All heterozygous tall you are getting. You are not getting the pure tall or pure dwarf. You are getting the first, in the first filial generation, the tall is getting exhibited. You are able to see this capital T, small t represents a hybrid tall. Now, in the F1 generation, whichever the plant I have got, this plant, when it undergoes self-pollination, that means the pollen grain transferred in the stigma of the same flower of the same plant, then what I get the result? Then you see this T into this T, capital T, this T into small t, capital T, small t. Again, you see small t into capital T, small t. Again, you see this small t into small t. You are getting small t, small t. Now phenotypically, now you see this is tall, this two is also tall, and this is dwarf. Now here you are getting 3 tall plant and 1 dwarf plant. That means if I tell you that what is the ratio of this plant, phenotype ratio, then how many tall plants are there? 1, 2 and 3. So your phenotype ratio will be 3:1. 3 tall and 1 short. But genotype, now here you see genotype, it refers to the genetic constitution of an organism. Now you see capital T, pure tall, small t, pure dwarf. So here now you see how many capital T you got? 1. Capital T, small t, hybrid tall, how many you got? 2. What is the homozygous recessive dwarf? 1. That means your genotype ratio will be 1:2:1. That means 1 pure tall, 2 hybrid tall, and 1 pure dwarf or short. So genetically, that means when I say genotype, very easy to understand. When you see capital T, that is pure genotype. Small t, pure. So here you see capital T, 1, small t, 1. But capital T, small t, how many you are getting? 2. So your genotype ratio will be 1:2:1. And now phenotypically, with your eye, you saw you saw what? Tall, one tall, 1 short, and hybrid tall. So phenotypically, that means you see out here 3 are tall, and 1 is short, that is dwarf. This is phenotype and genotype ratio. Now the same thing, let's try to see it in Punnett square. Now you see this T and this T, okay? Capital T, small t. Capital T, small t. I have taken from where? I have taken from F1 generation. From where I have taken? I have taken from F1 generation to get into F2 generation. So when I have got this in from F1 generation, in order to understand F2 generation, how will I do it? You see capital T, TT, capital T, small t, this T into this T, capital T, small t into small t, then you see TT. Now let's try to reform it. Now you see TT, this TT and this TT. Now you see this T and T, tall, this and this, hybrid tall, this one, dwarf. That means phenotype ratio, that means how many tall? Straight away you see tall. So 3 tall. And how many dwarf? 1. 1 short. So 3:1. Now genotype ratio. No, pure tall. That means TT, capital TT. How many you are getting? 1. Capital T, small t. How many you are getting? 2. Small t. How many you are getting? 1. So genotype ratio will be 1:2:1. So it is very easy way. That means rather than from this way, it is very easy to get the combination from Punnett square. Okay, we have already finished the terminology, and we came to know what is what do we mean by monohybrid, dihybrid, genotype, phenotype. Now based on this, Mendel has postulated the different aspect of the hybridization, and in that whatever the observation that he has put forward, Karl Korens, Hugo de Vries and Semark, they have put his postulates into law, which we'll be doing in the next class. Thank you.